Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Last Best Hope for Conversation, your Babylon 5 podcast. In the trapped elevator is Lou.
Hello, everyone. I've got drugs in my pocket and I don't know what to do with them.
Oh,
Karen.
hello. How are you guys?
And I am Jesse Jackson.
I'm guessing you heard my cat make an appearance.
Yes.
And that's a Bad Monks reference for those who are not familiar with what I was talking about.
Yes. Today we are talking Convictions, the second episode of the third season, originally aired November 13th, 1995. A mad bomber is loose on Babylon 5. When they find him, he threatens to detonate the station if his demands are not met. Meanwhile, G'Kar and Londo are trapped in an elevator. Londo wants to work together so they can escape, but G'Kar refuses to aid his nemesis. And we have monks. We were talking before we recorded. This is a meh episode. It has some nice moments, but as far as Karen mentioned, this isn't thread heavy. I certainly enjoyed it, but this wasn't one that I went, oh boy, Lou and Karen are going to love this. Lou, let's start with you. Quick thoughts?
I actually enjoyed the episode for what it was. I agree it didn't move the needle too much on the overall arc. I think there's some more set pieces being put in place here, and the religious undertones or overtones or allegory, however you want to slice it, is becoming stronger with each episode. And now we've got a team of monks that are basically their Q branch, I guess you could say. They're going to be providing all the intel, it looks like, and I imagine that if they need something created, that these guys are going to be the guys that are going to do it for them. So it'll be interesting to see how the monks play out. And I thought that the interplay between the characters was pretty good. I like the linear storyline. I was really chomping at the bit to see how the G'Kar Londo scenes were going to play out, but I gotta admit, I think that fell a little flat for me. But doing what they did with it, I appreciated what they did do with it. But I think that those scenes with the two of them in the elevator could have been so much more.
Yeah, I agree. It could have been, you could have almost done a quote unquote bottle episode of just them together. Yeah. And that would have been.
I would watch that.
Yes, absolutely. Karen, how about you?
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same way, although I'm not sure and I'm putting this in air quotes, liked it, but it was okay. There were some really good beats in it. The elevator scenes were great. And there were a couple little things. I loved the linear storyline and especially his dialogue once he woke up, which was good. I thought that it's continuing the story, but it's almost in an abstract way in this episode. And there were some things that bothered me about it, and I'll get into why when we get there. It was a personal thing. So there's that.
So, yeah, there's bombings happening in Babylon 5. They end up, a lot of people are hurt. There's damage. And in one scene, Lanier actually does save both Londo and Delenn. Yes, thank you. And we get, I think, a pretty interesting scene of Londo trying to figure out how do you say thank you for someone saving your life, and he's his normal arrogant self to the nurse doctor, and then he does this monologue, about you would do this for me and I would do this for you and it would do this, and I think my eyes are going to bleed. So let's start with, and then yay, Lanier surprisingly is okay and does wake up with a really funny, we kept hearing this, how many Centauri does it take to screw in a light bulb joke. So let's visit about that storyline. We'll start with you, Karen.
The bombing storyline? Is that where we're...
Yeah, and
Lanier.
Yeah, and then we'll get to the bomber.
Oh, okay. Then I'll just stay with Lanier for this one.
Okay.
First of all, that is 100% in his character. So that I enjoyed that we're showing that there's solidity to their character growth, that it's growing and then it's keeping what we've seen and building on that. A lot of shows lose that. They have to retcon and all that. Lanier is definitely Lanier. And it's good to see, especially with a side character. And I don't know how side he's going to be later on, but as far as right now, and I keep getting off topic, I'm very sorry.
That's okay.
So again, in character, then he goes into this coma. Londo being obsequious, even when he's not really hearing everything. I guess he did hear some of it because he got the joke. But the joke was lame, for one thing. It wasn't even a dad joke, right?
Yeah.
So it was terrible. Londo enjoyed himself, though, laughing at himself. And I really did appreciate his little talk with Lanier, because it does show that kind of vulnerable side of him. Still not redeeming himself in my eyes, but at least he showed how grateful he was. And then at the end, when Delenn goes to talk to him and says that he's probably going to get a commendation, that it was a lighthearted moment, but it does have some kind of repercussions, I think, because if he gets a stamp of approval from the Centauri, what is that going to mean? What is that going to actually hurt him moving forward? Because the Centauri aren't on the side of history. But I did appreciate that he says he should have stayed in a coma because he doesn't want to have to deal with it. But yeah, I do wonder if that's going to come back to haunt him.
Lou?
I think this was a seed planting story arc in that, at least for my position, I am having real difficulty in seeing how we can empathize with Londo anymore. And I think that this is the springboard into how that's going to happen, in that Lanier will become a sounding board or a weeping wall for Londo to get out his inner thoughts and regrets about what he's done so far. And I think Lanier has placed himself in the position of becoming Londo's sort of moral conscience. And I don't know if it's going to play out that way, but I think that I'm trying to think of why they set this, or why this story arc was put in place. And because this is serialized storytelling, I think that this is going to have some payoff down the line. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out, because it's obviously not going to happen between Londo and G'Kar. It has to be with Lanier. And I thought that Bill Mummy, it's very difficult to play this part with these parts where you're under so much makeup and prosthetics. And I think that G'Kar does a really good job. And I think Lanier does as well, Bill Mummy. Though with him, it's a little more difficult because the Minbari as a race and as a character, especially for him, they're much more restrained and subdued in their emoting and whatnots. And it's more of a, I don't want to say it like a Bob Newhart deadpan delivery, because he doesn't have the same comic chops as Bob Newhart, though he does try to. I think a lot of his lines are written to get a chuckle out of the audience. I'm really curious to see how that's going to play out. And I do think that the line that Karen was referring to when he woke up about he feels a little bummed out that he saved someone who has so little value for life in general is a very telling line. And I think that I believe this is going to be an interesting springboard going forward for those two characters.
I do know, and I've brought this up before, that Jane Espenson, when she's giving advice for writing, she says, find two characters that normally don't interact and put them in a room together, and is a good exercise. So I do think it's very interesting. And we have a history, right? Like, he took Lanier out drinking and spending his money to go to the gentleman's club. So
Mhm.
yes, there is that background. And I thought Peter Jurassic did a great job of playing that, not wanting to be in debt with someone and doing that. And then that silence, I'm gonna just wait for a while and rest, and you can visit later. Really well done.
Yeah,
Um,
and there's another thing from we haven't mentioned yet from a technical aspect. This episode was quite different in that there was a lot of handheld shots, which were quite effective to show like the chaos of the aftermath of the bombs and that. And I thought that was really well done. And then on the other hand, you had the very cinematic shots, like with Londo in the sick bay as the camera pulls back right through the window and out of the room very slowly. So I really appreciate. I don't know who off the top of my head directed this episode, but and if he's a regular or not. But is it they don't
yes,
put that.
Michael Viger.
Michael Vischer. I don't know if he's directed other episodes or not, but his shot selection in this episode was really well done. I enjoyed it from a directing perspective as well. So this episode, so that elevated it actually for me. I thought you might say they were a little showy at times, but I actually thought that they worked quite well.
Can I
for the
second
episode.
that? One of the things with Farscape is nothing in the scene was extra. If there was something in the foreground, it was meant to be seen. And there was some of that in this episode as well, which I like, that it's almost like a very 3D type experience. There was a scene where Sheridan and Garibaldi, it might not have been Sheridan, Garibaldi and someone else were looking at the bomb, and like a cog lifts to show us them behind it looking at the aftermath. And it struck me as really well directed. And like he said, things that move out, the camera pans, the camera moves out, something in the foreground moves. So I agree that this was a very well directed episode.
Yeah, he directed Babylon 5 in the beginning, which was the first TNT movie that we will probably watch after season 4, because that's when it was first shown. He's done 14 episodes of Babylon 5. He did the movie Babylon 5 Call to Arms. He did 4 episodes of Crusade, which was the follow-up to Babylon 5. And he did Babylon 5 The Legends of the Rangers, which was a TV movie. He's also done Star Trek and Enterprise, and he did 8 episodes of Jeremiah, which was one of the series that JMS did after Babylon 5.
Okay.
So yeah, very prolific director. And JMS had said in the notes he had thought this had an NYPD Blue feel to it, and which I think now that you mention it, the handhelds are good. And he's in the notes, he said that he felt that by this 3rd season, even the episodes that weren't as episodic never sunk to the level like on the 1st season, where there were not as strong. And so I think he was right to be proud of this one. And it is interesting to see the way it works. I wanted to ask you, Karen, why do you think Susan's hair is down most of the episode versus
I don't
her
know.
normal braid?
But it's gorgeous. I love her hair. Again, I noticed her hair. It was beautiful. I love that it's cascading down.
Yeah.
I think I might be into Susan a little bit.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know if it's an allegory for how she feels about her role and what she's doing, and she's more comfortable with things, or she feels like she's in her element with all this extra intrigue stuff going on. Last episode, she showed her chops and knowing all about the Rangers and everything. So whether this continues with the rest of the season, I don't know, and it'll be interesting to see.
So we do get the appearance of Brother Theo, named after Vincent van Gogh's brother. And in the notes in the official Babylon 5 script books, Stravinsky says that he had thought about having a Babylon 5 chaplain, and he thought that might be an interesting character to have them be part of it, but he could never kind of work it out. So instead, he thought that this group of monks would give him some interesting storylines. And so obviously, I really like the actor who's playing Brother Theo. I don't recognize him from what, but I think he really has he puts on just the right amount of humbleness, but at the same time, like when they're trying to look over their shoulder and he looks at them like, we know what we're doing. Back off. We may be monks. We have some of the best people for technology. And I just really liked the way he interacted, him and Susan, and doing this. And Garibaldi, this may be the craziest idea you've ever come with. And so I do think that I wish there was a coffee scene of Brother Theo and Garibaldi talking. I don't think there ever becomes one, but I'm throwing it out there on fan fiction. If someone wants to do that for me, I'll take it. Any thoughts on our monks, Lou?
As I mentioned off the top, I think they're going to be like their Babylon 5's Q branch. It's interesting because as you were talking, I was thinking about, they've never really, and I'm pigeonholing roles from other shows, but there's no science officer on Babylon 5 that I'm aware of, which in a way makes sense. I don't know, you're out in space and you're doing all this work with other races and that, you would think that there would be scientific interest in examining other cultures and things like that, but they don't seem to be doing that. But I believe that's because the primary function of the base is to be as a more of a diplomatic liaison post as opposed to a scientific research station. So in a way that makes sense, but still you think you would need scientists to examine things that are happening within the local area and that. So because that's not existing, GMS has, in my mind, used the monks as the excuse to have that role fulfilled by them, as opposed to dedicating another cast member from the Babylon 5 station to doing that. And it's interesting that, again, the cast is getting bigger with each episode. Like, I'm pretty sure that the rest of the monks will never talk. Then he could just say they all took a vow of silence. But
yeah.
So that there's this, we've got new rangers. Now we've got this science team because we specifically listed all their fields of expertise. And that's, oh yeah, these are all things that we could use on the stations. Yeah, it's a clever idea. And at the same time, it's an interesting mix of religion and science, which is always a thorny which always has a thorny relationship. So I'm going to be curious to see if they're ever going to be asked to do something which they have moral objections to, but something that could be very vital to the success of a particular mission or the Shadow War. So that'll be interesting to see as well.
The visual of being a modern station with monk robes is also visually, I think, interesting. Gives you a nice,
but there's already a lot of people with robes on the station.
That's true. Good point. Good point.
But I do admit, I think it's an interesting marriage of two often opposed fields, religion and science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been interesting if Sinclair, because he was raised by Jesuits, if he had been there to interaction. That would have been very interesting. Karen, how about you?
Yeah, I like that plot point. I see he was in several episodes, but he was also Drawl, the original Drawl, which I think is cool. I love that they reuse actors from makeup and then not makeup. It looks like the monks will be back a little bit. I'm sorry, I looked that up now.
That's okay.
Cheater.
But they didn't leave the ship. They didn't leave the base at the end of the episode. So I guess I assumed they would be back.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. It also, I think, ties in with the fact that the station has now been blessed by Kosh showing himself. We see that we have all these people trying to come and get their enlightenment, and because this amazing thing has happened on Babylon 5. And I think that the monks tie into that, definitely. And they also see value in having all these races together. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how useful they are. It just so happened that they were incredibly useful in this episode, finding the bomber in all the pictures. So I did enjoy the fact that they came on, they had a purpose, and they didn't leave. It's a thread, which, again, we like threads very much. So having to see him again, that's going to be good.
So let's talk about, I'm going to save the elevator for the end. So let's talk about our bomber. So take a drink. The song Downbound Train. I had a job, I had a girl, I had something going, mister, in this world. I got laid off down at the lumberyard. Our love went bad, times got hard. Now I work down at the car wash where all it ever does is rain. Don't you feel like you're riding on a downbound train? When he was talking about it, I was like, man, it's like he's quoting a Springsteen song, everything that has gone bad with him. So, Karen, let's start with you. The motivation of our bomber, the thoughts, the scenes with Sheridan putting the communicator on his privates, I assume, his butt, or maybe Karen wants to think about
No,
something else.
I don't actually want to think about that.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say that this storyline kind of gave me flashbacks. I lived in the DC area for a very long time. And if you guys remember, we had a sniper that went around the DC area. It was random. They actually shot someone at a gas station that we got gas at quite a bit. So it's almost like all of the DC area has a collective PTSD about it. And so to see this kind of the same, and this was written and everything long before that happened, probably 15 years before that happened. But it was like it all came back to me. You know, I was a temp at the time and I didn't know where I was going to go, and parking in a parking lot and walking to my job was scary. It was just scary to live in the DC area at that time. So I felt what they felt because of it being so random. And so that story kind of made me recoil a little bit. I hate that that's part of it, and there was about the same kind of reasoning. It's just the dude wanted to sow chaos because his life was so bad. And it's the same motivation that the snipers had, that their lives were bad and they just wanted to kill people. So yeah, a serial killer, definitely 100%. And I hated it. I understand why they did it. And I'm also assuming, and again, this is me assuming things, but because of this important thing that has happened on Babylon 5, this guy's attracted to it. And he thinks that it will make more of an impact because this amazing thing has happened on Babylon 5. And again, it just hit hard, and I hated that his motivation was just chaos, and it seemed senseless to me. So I get why they did it, but yeah, that's my whole thing with it.
Yeah, to get off on a slight tangent, and you guys skip ahead 5 minutes if you don't want to hear real world.
If you didn't say it, I would have.
Yeah, I shopped at the Allen Outlet Mall where the latest shooting happened. I bought Merrill's there. Linda and I have shopped there often. And I got a little bit snarky and sad on Twitter because that's what people do. People were debating on, how it was horrible that Warren Zevon didn't make the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and but they had room for Kate Bush. The only reason Kate Bush is because of Stranger Things, and Willie Nelson shouldn't be rock and roll. And by the way, I'm a big fan of Kate Bush and Willie Nelson, so I'm happy for them. Not happy that Warren Zevon didn't make it, but regardless, right? And I'm like, we just had another shooting. It seems like we're using our energy for the wrong things. So yeah, there is that. And I think that tells you that it's a good storytelling because it does bring back these things. This random, I don't have a plot. I don't particularly have, and the actor who played him played, I think, just enough crazy. Maybe just a little overplaying, but that's a nitpick. Lou, how about you? What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if the actor could have been just a little more restrained, it would have worked better. I understand that they want to make him seem like he's unstable, but the real world parallels are unmistakable, and especially in the light of what's going on in your country with the mass shootings and that. A lot of the motivations of what he's talking about are the same ones that you hear time and time again in real world situations. And it's amazing that something that aired, what year was this, in 1995, is even more relevant today than when this episode first aired. So this is the power of writing. It points out these foibles or things that in when you're in the moment are hard for people to understand or contemplate because you're too caught up in it for whatever reasons, ideology or partisanship or whatever. And it's just such a waste of life and the damage that it causes. A lot of times in real life and in this episode, all these people were killed, but they don't examine like one of these people might have had families. It could have been fathers, mothers. It's the same thing that happens in real life. We get desensitized to this because all these people are dying, and it's the destruction is not just restricted to the incident. It has a ripple effect that goes out into society. And this, in a small community like Babylon 5, where you're already in a contained environment, I would think would amplify the intensity of emotions, the hysteria, and so forth. So I really think that in this episode, it was interesting to see that this type of storyline was used to, what was it trying to prove? It was just a vehicle. I think it was just a vehicle to propel these other storylines, the Lanier Londo line, the Monk storyline. So if I had to knock the episode on anything, I think it would be this particular storyline. I think it was used and for something that I think could have been handled in another way to bring these disparate story elements tied in together. So if I had to knock the episode on one thing, it would probably be using this. But at the time, I would think that it wasn't as a sensitive issue as it is today. So I'm not sure how this plays. Like in different countries, this would play probably differently. In your country, I think it has a certain meaning. In my country, it's not nearly as intense, though we don't kid ourselves that we're much behind what's going on in the States. And even though we have much more restrictive gun laws and that, we still have our issues, and we still have like the partisanship politics is going on in that. And we've seen this in other countries, France, Italy. So it's not something that's just restricted to our country, but that's type of scenario that sets up this kind of dissatisfied loner individual is even more prevalent today, because to have the the schism between having all this interconnecting technology, but yet we're more isolated in many respects. It's quite interesting. And then, of course, we've had things like COVID. And I was mentioning to Jesse before we started, Karen, I don't know, but up here we're having really bad forest fires, and all the smoke is blowing down south into Alberta, the rest of Alberta, and across the country. Actually, like this is setting up smog alerts all over Canada, and so we can't even go outside right now because the air is so bad. So yeah, it's this sense of isolation is, and I'm just rambling now, but I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. So I'll just cut it short there.
Yeah. And I was also going to mention that I forgot until just now, they also did like searches, and they showed how invasive these searches were of people's parcels and making sure that people didn't.
Right. Yep. Good catch.
And again, it's before 9/11. And now that's just part of daily life. If you go on an airplane, you get searched. And we don't even think about it anymore. We take off our shoes before we get there. We open up our bags. Hey, here, look at everything I have. And there's a very easy thing to say, I'm not doing anything wrong, so it doesn't hurt me. Except it is a right to have some privacy. I don't love people looking at what I pack for vacation. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of them seeing the outline of my body in a scanner, but we just take it as rote. I'm just amazed at how, and we use this word a lot, prescient Babylon 5 was, that it's before 9/11, it's before all these shooters, it's before snipers, it came before all of this stuff, and now it's our daily life. So I'm surprised at how much he saw into the future.
One of the things that you remind me of is, and I don't know if Penn and Teller still sell it because the tone has changed, but for the longest time, you could buy a metal little card that had the first 10 amendments, and so if you put it in your card, it would sound off the metal detector, and so you go, oh yes, here, take my Bill of Rights to TSA as a joke. And it is that, where do you find, because I thought about that when Sheridan's saying, here's what we're going to do, and he starts naming all the things that they're going to do to be intrusive, and people being afraid to go outside is, as you said, it is. And I think well-written science fiction does that, right? Where you go, oh, wow, how did they see this? And what it is, the more we change, a lot of times we stay the same. So yeah, very well done. All right. One of the reasons is Stravinsky wanted to turn a cliche trope on its head. Two people stuck in an elevator, not liking each other, trapped, that are enemies, and having to put aside their differences to work together. And he decided it would be fun for G'Kar to go, nope, I want to live, but you know what? I want you to die more than I want to live. So Karen, I see your head nodding. You talk to us a little bit about this.
The best storyline, to be honest. This was the best storyline in the entire episode, and it was only in the last half. But this is the part that I really loved. Not only was it funny, but it gives G'Kar a bit of an outlet there for a few minutes. He is so happy that they might die, because that means Londo gets taken out. He doesn't care about himself. The needs of the many over the needs of the few for him. And I love that he's just so open about it. Londo says, why didn't you do anything to get us out? Well, I was passed out. Don't want to. I'm okay. I don't care if we die, as long as you die. It was fantastic. He hums his little fishy song. He's almost joyful to be stuck here in the elevator. And that's also turning the trope on its head. Usually there's only one bed, or they're stuck in an elevator, or they have to pretend to be engaged. There's all these tropes when it comes to like romance, but they are definitely not a romance. They're not even a bromance anymore. G'Kar hates Londo, hates him. And for him to take joy in this, I think showed a lot. And the acting was superb, again, between these two actors. And then at the end, when they get let out and G'Kar cries, he is so upset that they get saved at the end. And it really does show his vulnerability, that if he can do one thing to help, he will sacrifice himself. And then it doesn't come to fruition. He loses out and he feels like it's all been a waste, I'm assuming. And there's also scenes with Londo and Garibaldi or whoever, and I know it's G'Kar and Garibaldi, accusing each other of the Narns set the bombs or the Centauri set the bombs. And G'Kar especially is very worked up about it. He wants the Centauri to have done this so that they can retaliate, and he'll have someone bigger on his side. And Garibaldi just isn't having it. And he feels hopeless. And to see this over and over again, it really strengthens my love of his character. That he He's at the end of his wit, as it were.
Karen, I'm going to get you going and Lou this, but you did remind me of when they're making the argument that G'Kar is making the argument that it's the Centauri, and then Londo makes the argument it's him. But he is a perfect example of, once again, I hate to dog on people on social media because I'm one of them, but the idea when G'Kar, when Garibaldi said, yeah, see, that's how crazy they are.
Mm-hmm.
Reminds me of the joke where a conspiracist goes to heaven and asks God, okay, I've been wanting my whole life, who killed JFK? And he said, oh, leave her Oswald. He did it alone. And he walks off and he goes to another group. Wow, it's bigger than we even thought.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
That's
he just
funny.
was like, no, see, they're even willing to just not want to hear logic because his filter is such. Let's talk, Lou, let's talk elevators. Share with me.
Yeah, I'll start off with that last point. I do the Londo and G'Kar pleading their case that the other side is responsible for the action. Again, real world implications for that are pretty obvious. So I'm not even going to give examples because I think we could pull one out almost every day of the news cycle about that. And I appreciate what Karen said about the elevator scene, and I'm struggling with, I love the as much as the next person, the flipping of a trope. I just didn't believe that G'Kar would be that calm and calculating in that episode or in that instance, because we've seen it time and time again how passionate he is. And for him to just lay back like that and be controlled, I just found that really hard to believe. And so because of that, I just didn't buy their scenes together. I would have, my first thought was he's going to jump on him and strangle him. And he's just lying there. If they may have written the scene to show that he was incapacitated and something had fallen on top of him, then okay, maybe I could buy that. Obviously, he can't do anything physically, but for him to sit in the corner like that and be so controlled, I couldn't buy it. I just couldn't buy his character would be that controlled for that whole scene sequences. And I don't think there was any seed planting anywhere in the series for that. And in fact, his whole scene with Aldi emphasized again how passionate he is. He wanted that bomb to be blamed to be put on the Centauri. So I just couldn't buy that whole elevator scene. And for me, it was the weakest part of the episode.
I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just going to give a counterpoint that I think the idea of, and he says, why didn't you kill me? Oh, no, because it's decree that if for any one Centauri, 100.
But who would know? He could have said he died in the elevator crash or whatever.
Yeah, I guess. I think he was just the letter
like the
of the
explosion.
law. I also think it's a torture to Londo to watch him I'm not going to have you have a quick death. It is going to be a slow death, and I get the joy of watching you die just by my inaction. Yeah, I get how you're going, because in a lot of ways, I could agree with you. This seems out of character for G'Kar because he is so passionate. He loves to the extreme. He
was going to commit a public execution at one point.
Like, maybe if you can just lean the fellow up, I can just kind of, I get it. I think that's a fair nit. Yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't buy how that scene played out because of his character. Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, but
no, I think
nothing has been established to show that he had that kind of self-control.
Yeah. And I did love the kind of ends where, as the dialogue's during off, Lamondo, go be the ambassador of Babylon 5, they say. It will be easy assignment. I hate my life. G'Kar, so do I. And Londo, shut up. It was a fun scene together with them, and it's great. And Zach had a funny little scene where he's just so beaten down by all these missionaries. And he goes, look at that plant. Go poke that plant. That plant's even holier than I.
Star Lab.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
Sky Lab.
yeah. And they're just
Squirrel.
poking. Yeah, squirrel. Yeah. Anything else we need to visit about? Anything we've missed?
I appreciated that they gave more of an explanation about the down below, that people are like pulling stuff out to sell. And so it's even more helping me understand why there's this part that there's a slum on Babylon 5, that the people are actively making it a slum.
Okay.
So yeah, I did appreciate that. I appreciate when they give us, like Lou probably does with the waygates, if they give us more information about that down the line. I appreciate that.
Good.
Yeah. I was curious why they gave some of those sickbay scenes to an extra as opposed to Franklin. Why would they do that? Unless they didn't want Franklin to be involved in those scenes between Londo and Linear. I didn't understand. Sometimes you go, okay, this doesn't make sense for this particular character be here, but he's the doctor of sickbay, like he's the lead officer. Why wouldn't they have him use him unless it was just his schedule and he couldn't be there? Maybe that's why they had to write those scenes for that extra. I don't know, but it was just a weird choice. And in a realistic situation, yeah, there's more than one doctor, obviously, in the sickbay, but it just seems like a wasted opportunity for him to have some extra scenes with Londo and maybe establish some sort of, because we don't really know we probably do know how, if we asked Franklin how we felt about Londo, I'm sure he would be in line with what we're thinking, but we haven't really seen him express that I can remember. I'm just forgetting. He hasn't really said anything directly to Londo. He has, but he snarks everybody a little bit, but I can't thoroughly think of anything special. Do you guys think of anything that he's done to Londo that?
Not to Londo, but he has treated a lot of Narn.
And also when, like G'Kar, he said that's the shame when the Emperor died. So yeah, I don't know the reason why. My mind is because it's a big station and there's a lot of other stuff going on.
Yeah,
that it seemed a little more realistic. But you're right. You would have been like, hey,
what a great opportunity to have these two guys together in a
yeah.
scene. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, kind of weird. I get that. All right.
And
what else?
We also had the scene with the obnoxious guy sitting next to Lanier talking about, and he had the porn stash and he was, hey, how you doing, buddy? I've got hair.
You reminded me of Lou Ferrigno for some reason.
Yeah, a little bit. And that shows us again, I think that there was a reason for that they have the capacity to lie, but he has to do penance now.
Yes,
because of it. Yeah. But again, he thought it was worth it. And yeah, I agree with him that it was worth it to get that guy off his back.
And it was Netter syndrome, which is after Doug Netter, one of the VPs or one of the executive producers. Yeah, nicely done. Nicely done.
And also we have to talk about Marishi, right? A bomb expert.
Yes.
I don't want to talk too much about it, but Carrie, I can't pronounce his name. I don't want to butcher his name. His first name is Carrie. And he's a prolific extra.
Yeah, he looks very familiar.
Yeah, and a character actor. So it was nice to see him, even though I doubt we'll see him again. It was cool to have another character instead of Garibaldi just investigating the bomb. He's definitely not a bomb expert. So it was nice to have that somebody to be the go-between.
I agree. I thought it was, and he got some nice scenes. And you do almost felt, oh, they're setting up that we'll use him again, but I don't remember him being back. Yeah. Good. Anything else, guys? Okay, good. All right. Ratings. I'm going to give this 7 out of 10 holy plants. There's some good in it. There's some bad.
You took mine.
Oh, no.
It's okay.
All right. So, Lou, I'll let you rate so that Karen has time to come up with another one.
Okay. I hope I'm not going to steal this one from you, Karen. I'm going to give this 7 monkeys.
All right. And I'll give it 7 missionary positions. Since you took my
Nice.
plant.
Nice. I love that.
Yes,
That
that
is
we never
good.
did talk about the comlink placement for Sheridan.
Yes, we did. And I said I didn't want to go there.
It was funny. And make sure no one pages the captain.
Or do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It might be nice.
We used to make those jokes on when you had a pager and it had the vibrate mode that depending on your placement, it could be a marital device. So
Again, I don't want to know. I love Bruce Boxleitner, but that's too
Yes.
far, I think.
absolutely. All right. I think we got a couple of emails, Karen.
And of course, I don't have it pulled up. I'm very sorry. I'll
That's
pull it
okay.
up. I'm the worst.
No. Let me know if I need to read them.
Convictions. No.
Okay.
Well, I only have one from
Yeah,
Texas
that's all I
on
had
the
too.
Shock. Okay. So it's from Texas on the Shock. And hi, Texas. I'm picturing Claudia Christian going around while this one was filming saying boom, boom. I would also like to announce my cover of G'Kar's Not Many Fishes with background Gregorian chanting. Okay, yeah, let's mesh those two together, right? And now shall we discuss the missionary position or any other position for that matter? Not really all that much to say about this episode. I do like it overall. There just isn't that much to discuss about it, other than some amusing behind the scenes stories. Apparently, the elevator scenes were supposed to be played seriously, but Andreas Katsoulis felt G'Kar would find the situation hilarious. Anyway, till next time, assuming you make it through this without completely losing your mind. It's very nice. Thank you, Texas.
Yes, thank you, Texas, very much. Lou, anything significant from the YouTube channel? I know we're not reading every comments, but I don't know if there was anything.
Generally, they're all saying that welcome to season 3. You're going to really enjoy it. It's, I guess, where the show really hits its stride. And Simon says, if you thought Tucker Smallwood was a quality guest star, just you wait. So that's an exciting tease. And there's some stuff about jump gates again, and I think we've done that one to death. And yeah, it's everybody's excited about us getting into this 3rd season, and I think the discussion is going to ramp up about the various things as they come up. I do want to mention that Simon, or is it Chrism, mentions the animated movie, and now he's wondering with the changes in management at CW whether or not this animated movie is going to prove as a proof of concept, a proof of market to get a new series done. So hoping that the reception for the animated movie is good, and I would think that's probably a safe bet that if it doesn't do well, it could hurt the chances of a live action series being done. So we'll have to keep our fingers crossed with that. Fortunately, as we mentioned, it's coming out to San Diego Comic-Con. So that is, I can't think of a better place to launch a new project of this type. Keep our fingers crossed that good things will be coming down the road because of it.
And the Warner Brothers has done a whole series of DC Universe films. I was watching the Legion of Superheroes last night, which kind of redoes the Legion mythos with Supergirl going up there and going into the future. Yeah, there was an article saying that the Babylon 5 reboot was dead. That with the way CW is rebranding themselves, they have no superhero shows anymore, only 2 scripted shows, that it's just not going to happen. And JMS has said on Twitter that if it was dead, he would be told. He said, I did not get that call. I got a call that's saying with the writer's strike right now, we're just in a holding pattern.
Actually, it sounds like a perfect time for them to switch over to this series if they're dropping all their superhero content. They've got this big hole to fill, and why not go back to something that has some traction with a significant part of the viewing audience? And
I think this is the same thing multiple years ago when TNT got out of the original series for a while, that they just didn't want this. I do think that if the animated film does really well for them, that it makes a lot of money, that if CW passes on it, there is a good chance that another streaming service may take it up. We'll see. and I you never know when are you grasping at straws or you're being realistic, right? If you're applying for a job and you haven't heard anything in 3 weeks, part of you wants to go, it's not over, it's done. But at the same time, they haven't told you. No. So anyway, we'll see what happens. I am very excited that we're going to get this animated movie, and I hope it's good. It sounds like it's going to be good.
Can I apologize preemptively? I said Waygates earlier, and I'm sure people are gonna get mad at me for that. It's Jump Gates. No, it's Jump Gates. It's the same thing. Wormholes, Waygates, Jump Gates, all of that. So I apologize.
Apology accepted.
Lou, if someone wants to reach you, how can they?
They can obviously find us on the YouTube channel at Lou's Reviews, where you'll also find all our sister shows such as JKL Media, my writer's podcast, my Stephen King podcast. On Twitter, you can find me at Lou W. Sitzma. And I also have the S King podcast Twitter account, but I've lost my email links and that, so I can't access that account right now. So I'm waiting for Twitter to get back to me, but it's a slow process. So
good luck.
If you're wondering why my S King podcast feed has been quiet, that's the reason why.
Okay. Karen?
And I am at Eleveria on Twitter and a bunch of other places. And my blog is alliestuff.com.
Good. You can email us, jklb5podcast@gmail.com, the same way that Texas Alashok did. We would love to hear from you. I am at Jesse Jackson, DFW on Twitter. And you can hear me coming up Memorial Day. I have a special 3-part episode of Set Lusting Bruce where me and a group of fans did a roundtable of what was Bruce Springsteen's best cover song of the songs that he has covered that's written by other artists. We had a nice roundtable discussion, and just earlier I had 4 or 5 published authors join me to talk about what is Springsteen's best written song. So a couple of you who are not normally a Springsteen fan, those are actually really good discussions about story writing and use of songs, and so it's I'm really proud of the episodes.
Can I vote for Santa Claus is Coming to Town?
That was on the list.
Okay, awesome.
Yes, it was. Yeah. All right. We will be back next week. A Day in the Strife is the next episode. So for now, thank you, Karen. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, listeners. We will talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you, Jesse. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.